Okay, so early electronic digital computers. Computers need a way to give the on-off, yes, no, 0, 1 instruction. So they require millions of switching elements that can store the on or off or 1 or 0 or yes or no instruction. Again, remember algorithms, right? It's a yes or no thing, right? You either go this way or go that way. So before 1948, electronic vacuum tubes were used, consisting of an anode plate, a heatable cathode, and a glass bulb. You guys know about cathodes and anodes and glass bulbs, so that should hopefully make a little bit of sense. The greatest breakthrough, as they say, with these was in 1948 with the development of something called a solid-state transistor. It's a lot like the silicon semiconductors that we have now in our computers that either send or don't send an electric signal under certain conditions, like a specific voltage or something like that. It's a lot like that, solid-state transistor. No heating or vacuum in it, so no vacuum tube to maintain. That's why the vacuum tubes went bad, by the way. It's because they would lose their vacuum over time. It's hard to make a vacuum tube and hard to keep its vacuum. So the vacuum tubes would go bad. These didn't have vacuum tubes. As it says, these were solid-state transistors. So before we go look at what those are, this is a picture of a vacuum tube diodes with cathode pins. And the problem with the problem with the vacuum tubes is just like the problem with any light bulb, right? Light bulbs that we use don't have a vacuum in them, so not these. These aren't a good example, but like a regular just incandescent light bulb with the filament in it that doesn't have a vacuum. So if you ever use those, right, they break all the time. But what's in them is a gas, right? There's a gas in that tube to displace air. The tubes would go bad because of that. These vacuum tubes would go bad because of a similar thing. It would lose in light bulbs. It loses the gas, right? In vacuum tubes, it loses the vacuum over time. It's hard to keep a vacuum. So that was the problem with these transistors. These would be each little part of the processor, and these little transistors would go bad, and they'd have to replace them. So the way they worked was, when current would run through the vacuum tube, that would be the value of 1 or yes, and a yes answer to an instruction, or the bit value of 1. Okay, we haven't talked much about binary yet, but you have heard of binary and zeros and ones, and hopefully you read the chapters. Hopefully you're able to follow along a little bit. So when current runs through the cathode, that's a value of 1 in the vacuum tube. When the cathode current is blocked, that's a value of 0, a bit value of 0, or not on at all. Transistors, when the silicon is charged, that's where we get our on state, our yes or on state or 1 answer, current flowing. The silicon uncharged, 0 or no, or off state. And this is a significant improvement primarily because, so two things. Size was a big problem, right? These solid-state transistors are able to be much smaller, so that's size component. And because they don't have a vacuum in a big piece of glass, so they were smaller because they didn't have a big piece of glass in a vacuum, and you didn't have to worry about maintaining the vacuum. The silicon just was there, and it either did run current through it or did not run current through it. So the most important invention in the history of computer software is the small silicon crystals, allowing the miniaturization of memory components and durability for very long lifespans. So with the solid-state transistors, which is a lot like what we use nowadays, small and long-lasting, two good things. Okay, so let's do a brief run through of the history generation of computers. First generation computers, vacuum tubes would conduct heat through the cathode. That heat would create the on state or the off state, either there or not. 1951. 1958, transistors conducting a silicon charge. When the silicon is charged, that's the on state. When it's off, that's the off state, ones or zeros. Third generation, integrated circuits, so miniaturized components putting all the circuits together, chemically fused into one small silicon chip into microscopic circuits, 1965. Fourth generation, enhanced miniaturization, so we're getting smaller integrated circuits, and you have that done in the 1970s and 1990s on different devices. But in any case, the history is smallifying, right? And now we've got phones in our hands, right? So I don't know if you know this, but like a simple calculator that you can use, just like the Texas Instruments basic calculators that we all used in math, those have more processing power than like the lunar lander did. Right, we sent to the moon, right? So what we have now, because of these microchips, gives us just incredibly more processing power than we would have ever had without them.